Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's special meeting of the New Albany Plain Local Schools Board of Education. I will call the meeting to order and request a roll call, please.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Here.
Mr. Bush?
Here.
Mr. Newmoff?
Here.
Vice President Darrow? President McClelland?
Here. Now to tonight's meeting agenda. Any additions or corrections to the agenda, Mr. Sawyers?
None, thank you.
With none, can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Ms. Kalinowski, a second by Mr. Bush. Roll call, please.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Vice President Darrow?
Yes.
President McClelland?
Yes. So our agenda is approved tonight. First item of business is public participation. Do we have anyone here for public participation? All right, with no one here, we will move on to our next item, which is our only item tonight, and that is discussion items for the 2020-21 responsible restart update. Mr. Sawyers.
Talk slow and loud.
I know. It's fine. Thank you, President McClelland, members of the Board of Education. This evening, we're going to begin with an update to ground ourselves, as always, within our statement of purpose for everything we're doing across our school campus on a daily basis, and it's to create a culture of accountability that achieves the best academic and developmental outcomes for each student in our school district. Again, I recall for our community and our parents at home and the Board of Education that we've continuously talked about from the R factor, the necessity to adjust and adapt as we build skills during this unprecedented time of the pandemic in our school district, and the roller coaster ride that has been our experience to date as we did a delayed start to the school year to actually begin the school year in a hybrid model, have transitioned through a couple different versions of the hybrid model as we ride the roller coaster to determine our next steps tonight based upon updates that are provided to the Board of Education and the action you choose to take. I'm going to start tonight with data associated to COVID-19 and case reporting and information that we've received this week from Franklin County Public Health. So as always, the graphics that are presented on the screen tonight, I'm not going to read in detail. These are available on our school district website. They're also available on the Franklin County Public Health website. This graphic was specifically updated during the nurses' call this week to specifically add clarification for symptoms associated to COVID-19 to clarify new or worsened cough and new or worsened nasal congestion or runny nose. Unfortunately, with allergy season and the change of the weather, we've had several students in our school district that have had runny noses that have ultimately meet the qualifications for potentially becoming symptomatic associated to COVID-19, and therefore have gone through those protocols with the nurses, our clinic aides, and their families to determine if they were permitted to stay in school or have to go home, and in most cases went home until they actually have a doctor's appointment, get an alternate diagnosis, or determine if they do or do not have COVID, because it's one of the symptoms that is a singular symptom specifically. So this was actually updated this week by Franklin County Public Health as a result of all of the phone calls that they were getting specifically related to a runny nose dominantly, but they've also addressed now the worsened cough. Remind our families across the school district, regardless if you are in person or a VLP student who stays home every single day to participate in the virtual learning program, that we have a COVID-19 case reporting hotline. This is our RN in the school district, Joy Norton. We're asking any person in our school district that is a student, regardless, again, at home or at school, to please report anything associated to COVID-19 to the reporting hotline so that we can follow up with you accordingly to meet the requirements of Franklin County Public Health. As a reminder for communication purposes, because we have had symptoms or issues within our school district related to COVID-19 for students that were potentially exposed that ultimately do end up being quarantined, the differences in the communications that we do send home. So there is a written communication that is sent to a family when quarantine or isolation is necessary, pursuant to the guidelines received from Franklin County Public Health. And then lastly, just for a reminder, there are specific protocols that we are required to follow in accordance with Franklin County Public Health. These are posted on our website, and again, they're posted on Franklin County Public Health's website, and I strongly encourage families to refer to them to familiarize yourself with those expectations for what we're doing at school to meet the compliance requirements with Franklin County Public Health related to persons that are symptomatic and or have to go through the process to determine if they do or do not have COVID-19 and or have been exposed as a close contact. And again, in the bottom left-hand corner, a close contact is defined as someone who was within 6 feet of an infected person for at least 15 minutes, starting from 2 days before the illness onset, for asymptomatic patients 2 days prior to the positive specimen collection. So within 6 feet for greater than 15 minutes for anyone that is symptomatic will result in a conversation with the school district to determine isolation and or quarantine requirements. Lastly, in this section for COVID, ultimately understanding for contact tracing, this one is from the Franklin County Public Health and the CDC in reference to what happens during contact tracing if you've been actually diagnosed with COVID-19 versus contact tracing if you are someone who's been exposed to COVID-19. And again, they're available on our website as well as the Franklin County Public website and the CDC. Community data associated to COVID-19 to answer most frequently asked questions I received through email. So we are publicly reporting on a weekly basis now in compliance with the order from the Ohio Department of Health. Before I get into that specific data associated to our school district, just want to take a moment and introduce data that's available through the Franklin County Public Health District. This is a graph that shows you by age ranges the number of cases per month within that specific age set. So ages 0 through 19 in the month of September to date, on September 29th when this was pulled, there were 78 cases total in Franklin County. And then again, you can see the bar graphs for all the other age groups. Up at the top, there's 1,147 cases within the 3 zip codes associated to our school district of persons of all ages. So this does not represent our student demographic. This is any human being living in those 3 zip codes that has tested positive for COVID-19 since March of 2020. There's 1,147 cases since March. I shared at the last Board of Education meeting that we were starting a partnership with The Ohio State University related to COVID-19 analytics and targeted surveillance systems, specifically for schools, based upon a pilot that was done with the Hilliard City Schools and the Upper Arlington local schools. So tonight, I'm just going to introduce concepts associated to that because there's public-facing dashboard data that will become available to our school district on a weekly basis now through The Ohio State University that specifically looks at COVID-19 case counts and rates by age, by settings, or by association specifically with our schools. So they're actually going to use our shape map for our school district boundaries to report data specifically within our school district boundaries. We are no longer able to secure that information from Franklin County Public Health. So the new source for that data specifically will be The Ohio State University through this partnership. We're also working to align data sets to basically allow them to interpret data associated to student absences, student visits for nursing, and differentiate between influenza-like or COVID-19 specific illness, and then staff absences as a comparative. So this data will become available to our school districts in a summary report on a weekly basis. This is a snapshot of this week's data. Again, I'm going to call your attention to the bullets at the top of the slide that this is based upon last 2 weeks of data from the Ohio Department of Health and excludes cases in congregate settings. It is not the rate of cases in a school district building. And these are rates of cases among all residents living within each school district. So specifically within our school district shape map that makes up our school district boundaries within the last 2 weeks, the Ohio State University is saying for New Albany Plain Local School District specifically, there were 71 active cases of persons of all ages residing within school district boundaries. And then again, you can see all the different school districts across Franklin County. And again, it's per 100,000 for the case count.
Mr. Sawyers, just to clarify, there aren't 100,000 people that live in our school district.
There are not.
So that number is not the number of cases total. That is they're extrapolating that out
Correct.
over 100,000.
It's an extrapolated data point per 100,000 to create equity across all of Franklin County. And again, this is another graph that just shows the same thing in graph format. The shaded gray lines behind it are all the school districts within Franklin County specifically. And then the dark black line is New Albany Plain Local School District boundaries. And again, extrapolated to be to the 100,000 marker. For school district specific dashboard data, because I get asked this question often, because of the state requirement for public reporting, the governor does publicly report this typically every Thursday during his press conference. His data is in arrears. It's collected on Monday through Sunday. We're reporting data live to Franklin County Public Health every 24 hours. And then we publicly report our dashboard on Fridays within our school district. So last week's data to show new cases specifically within our school district for the week of September 21st through September 25th, we posted last Friday. We indicated that there were 3 staff members that were quarantined. There were 0 staff members that tested positive within our school district for COVID-19. There were 3 students who tested positive for COVID-19 and 16 students who were quarantined for potential exposure at school to said individuals. Tomorrow, we will post this week's data. So I'm showing you currently projections. So it's still in draft format because tomorrow has yet to happen. So we have to go through the school day tomorrow to update this graph. Right now, this week, we will publicly report that there was 1 staff member who tested positive at New Albany Middle School. Happened to be a second shift employee who did not have direct contact with students or other staff members, so no one was directly exposed as a result of him or her. And we have 1 staff member that has been quarantined this week because of a third-party situation outside of the school district. On the student world, currently this week, we have 0 students that have been tested positive for COVID-19, and we have 3 students that have been quarantined for situations involving their family outside of the school district, or for the necessity to isolate with the refusal to be tested, which was issued by the Franklin County Public Health Department. So if you are contacted by the health department because they believe you have a potential exposure, you refuse to participate in COVID testing, you then go into isolation, which we count as part of the quarantine protocol. Cumulative data since September 14th, just to show for transparency purposes what's happened in our school district over the course of the last 3 weeks. And again, it's in draft format because tomorrow is not over with. We've had 1 staff member to date that's tested positive, 10 staff members who have been quarantined, 5 students who have tested positive, and 34 students who have been quarantined. I think it's very important to note, the notes I put at the bottom, that all 6 positive cases of COVID-19 to date were contracted outside of the school district. It did not happen at school or at work. No students or staff members that have been required to quarantine to date due to potential exposure at school have become ill or tested positive for COVID-19. So fortunately, no one has gotten sick. They've just been required by the health department to adhere to the quarantine requirement. For comparison, because people ask me, what do we look like compared to other schools? So I pulled 2 examples for conversations that I have pretty much on a weekly basis. Mason City Schools is twice our size. They have over 10,500 kids. They have 3,200 kids currently attending their high school in Mason. So they're literally double, if 2.5 times bigger than New Albany High School, because we have about 1,300 kids currently when we're all in. So this is their data from last week that just gives you that picture. The biggest thing that's happening in Mason is really the number of students that are getting quarantined. And it goes back to within 6 feet for 15 or more minutes. That is the rule by the health department. And I've shared with the Board of Education that we've had conversations with government officials, and Mason's kind of spearheading this with Cincinnati Children's Hospital, that of over to date, and Mason's been in school for approximately 5 weeks all in. They have over 500 students in the last 5 weeks total in their school district, dominantly at the high school, that have been required to be quarantined, but none of those students, over 500, have become ill. So they have 0 students being quarantined that are ill. So Cincinnati Children's Hospital is working with Mason to try to have conversations with the Ohio Department of Health and government officials about the World Health Organization recommendation that 3 feet of social distancing at best is sufficient compared to the 6-foot requirement that's currently being adhered to by the local health departments based upon the Ohio Department of Health. That would significantly change Mason's current reality of the number of kids that are being quarantined. And to the same, it would have impacted us for the 30+ students that we've quarantined. Some of those students would not have been quarantined if it were not for the 6 feet rule. Another example is Lakota. Lakota Local is next door to Mason. They have been in school for over 6 weeks total, all in. Within their school district. Lakota as a demographic has nearly 17,000 students in their school district. Approximately 25% of their students, much like Mason, are attending school online, similar to ours. We have about 30% in New Albany that are attending the VLP. But out of the nearly 17,000 kids, less, again, the 4,000 plus that are attending school online, they have 379 students to date that have been quarantined. 21 students that have tested positive, and 37 staff members that have been quarantined, and 7 staff members that tested positive. So this is just a snapshot of their data so people can see. The dashboard look might be a little bit different by school district, but we're basically all reporting the same information to be compliant with the public health order that was issued to illustrate the number of students or staff members that are testing positive and or quarantined by a specific location within your school district. Our path forward. So the board will recall at our last board meeting approximately 2 weeks ago, we elected option number 3 to switch to a hybrid plus an in-person all-in over the course of last week and this week. Both were 4-day school weeks. So on Tuesday and Friday, we welcomed over 3,500 kids to the school campus if they elected all in for in-person instruction. And our VLP students remain uninterrupted at home. And then on Wednesday and Thursday, we've done the hybrid model with the 50% gold, 50% maroon. So in our VLP program specifically, I'm going to step back to step forward. We've talked with our VLP administrators. And again, for easy contact information, I put this in here for parents that Mr. Emery is the elementary, Mrs. Morgan is the secondary. We've talked about what's specifically working since school started. So we wanted to understand, because it was a professional development day this past Monday, we stopped to take stock and press pause to actually ask questions to understand from a parent perspective in the VLP world, and then from a staff perspective in the in-person world, what specifically is working. So at the elementary level, examples within the VLP program are the live instruction for students, especially for small group sessions, the support of VLP colleagues helping each other troubleshoot and be successful, and great parent support and patience as teachers were working through the technical issues dominantly associated to technology. At the secondary level in our VLP program, students are becoming more adept at self-pacing. The in-person meetings are going extremely well, and they're building relationships through study centers for socialization purposes through regular meetings in progress. What's not working in the VLP? So for transparency, we asked the question. These are the top 3. Inconsistent video streaming performance impacting live lessons. So hiccups related to internet, different broadband access, different providers that people have within their homes. Some of the providers are more reliable than others. The power went out, there was an electrical blip, the computer reset, those types of things. iPad applications working inconsistently and interrupting lessons. So we've been problem solving some of the technology issues specifically on the iPad with the software we're using in a specific grade level or subject. And the time spent preparing lessons taking longer than in the past because we're incorporating technology into everything. So teachers are actually taking longer to achieve that similar goal as to what we would have done for in-person. On the secondary level, technology also a challenge, similar hiccups to the elementary. The one size fits all is difficult, and it's frustrating for some students who struggle with their academics because it is a core content subject that's being taught online to a large degree, facilitated by the student, and it's content heavy. So some of our students have discovered that they've never taken an online class before and they don't really like the online environment. So we are trying to troubleshoot that to provide interventions and supports to help the kids be successful. And then it's also challenging for some students to stay focused and engaged in the online world because they miss the socialization that typically would be part of an in-person instructional environment. The other thing that we're hearing from parents routinely and frequently is that the curriculum is very literature heavy. So some of the courses have significant amounts of reading that are required to facilitate the online instruction. Improvements in the VLP world, we have to continue to build and troubleshoot documents or videos to assist parents at home. We're talking about computer memory upgrades because of teachers and their the technology that we've given the teachers for their in-school usage that's now at home. They're doing much more on it, so it gets tired quicker. It's not as fast for processing purposes. It's not a gaming computer by any means, but that's literally in some cases what some teachers could actually benefit from. So we're doing an analysis to determine what we do specifically for technology. I'm looking towards second semester. Invest time into revising schools' PLP courses to also align with the Ohio standards. At the secondary level, we're continuing to work through staff meetings to determine how to best meet the students' needs. So teachers are talking to each other about tips and tricks that they can use within the school's PLP environment at the secondary level. Increasing our communication efforts and talking about attendance procedures, because unfortunately we've discovered that because some students are already frustrated with the online environment, they're not coming to school the way that they're supposed to be coming to school. For VLP enrollment, I want to just give a couple updates that, because these are questions I'm getting through email, so I think it's just easier to put it out to all of our families. The VLP world is uninterrupted through at least Friday, January 15th. Regardless of what the Board of Education does, the VLP world is the VLP world. You signed up for and made a commitment for at least the first semester. Our first semester ends on January 15th because we delayed the start to the school year. I am going on record tonight to publicly announce the parents and guardians that are requesting to withdraw from the VLP world and return to in-person to take our roller coaster ride will now be assigned to a wait list. This is necessary because we have to determine if the course schedule that a student has or the grade level that a student is in has enrollment capacity, because we've registered over 20 new students in the last week in our school district. So our enrollment is changing daily, and it's taking the empty seats that I had available for in-person. So anyone that wants to get out of the VLP world will now be waitlisted. Please contact the appropriate administrator, Mr. Emery or Mrs. Roberts. We can't guarantee that the changes will be possible before January, when we could assess changes in staffing levels, because I could restaff for second semester. The request will be assessed on a case-by-case basis because of the commitment that people made for the first semester. We will continue to provide intervention, enrichment, and support. Please communicate with your teachers and administrators, and we will start a second round of enrollment for the VLP for families that want to stay online during second semester late this month. For our in-person students this evening, I really want to congratulate our kids, our faculty, our staff, and our parents for really adhering to the safety protocols. Over 99% of our kids are masking up every day. It's been tremendous. It's absolutely incredible to see across the school campus the kids are wearing their masks the way that they're supposed to. Cover your nose down to your chin. We've had to remind a few students, but it's not something that's constant. I will say in the last 2 weeks, I've probably talked to 6 individual kids when I've been out and about. That's pretty good when I cover the whole campus, and teachers are saying the same. Back up 3 to 6 feet. So there's a lot of questions being asked related to social distancing. We're going to send home some additional information related to that based upon our conversations with the task force, because there is a debate going on between the World Health Organization that's saying up to 3 feet and the CDC that's saying up to 6 feet. And our New Albany task force doctors do not necessarily agree. So we will be working to send some additional information to our families to clarify, as well as to our staff, the social distancing questions we're getting. I've been very transparent with the board that when we were all in with 3,500 kids on campus, we will not be 6 feet apart in 99% of the cases. Our goal is to maintain 3 feet as much as humanly possible. When you are standing in line at lunch, we're trying to keep the kids apart. That's one of the challenges from a standpoint that kids are social. You see somebody you haven't seen for a while, you want to be social. We're asking them to create distance between themselves, and lunch is a really hard place if that's actually been occurring. Washing up, kids have been tremendous. So again, some highlights tonight for what's working on the all-in-person world. We actually do believe the kids are happy. They're excited to be here. We see smiling eyes is what we talk about at the elementary level. So somehow, some way, you have to illustrate a facial expression without using your face through your eyes. And kids are starting to do that. So we call them smiling eyes. Small group environments are working tremendously on the health and safety protocols. So the hybrid relations or the hybrid start that we did actually created incredible relationships and allowed teachers to assess students in new and creative ways, even to the point where teachers are begging me that post-COVID, when everything is cured, we should still consider a hybrid start to the first week of school to let teachers have those relationships that they've discovered this year in a very different way. Ability for everyone to adjust and adapt has also been absolutely incredible. At the secondary level, again, kids have been tremendous at adhering to all of the safety protocols. And again, at the secondary level, the one that's been the most obvious as a challenge is social distancing. Being flexible and adapting to the lessons to meet the specific needs, and again, building the positive relationships. For transparency on what's not working in our current reality, Schoology. So we're having some Schoology issues district-wide. It's no different than what was happening in the VLP program. So we're working through that. Schoology's had some timeouts that we did not necessitate. They were done by the provider. Pick up and drop off for all-in days has created some traffic congestion, particularly at the elementary level. We haven't given the number, but we checked this morning. There are 324 kids that are eligible for transportation whose parents opted out of transportation because of COVID. That's creating traffic. So we've adjusted parent pickup and drop off for the intermediate and primary school dominantly. And we've instituted a color code system at the primary school that Mrs. Smith and her administrators, as well as Mr. Hood, are actively working through to provide updates. The iPad setup was different just because of social distancing this year. So we've had some kid challenges related to the apps on the iPad that we're still working to resolve. At the secondary level, I've talked about social distancing. It's been an issue when we've had all-in days related to performing arts, because when they were in small groups, we had specific spaces. Now we're looking for different space usage based upon the all-in days and what's acoustically pleasing. I'll just say that the wrestling room with a metal roof and a concrete floor isn't great for band. It's not. So we have to find a new location. So that's why we put it on the list to say it's a recognized challenge. Managing at home online days in the hybrid model has been very difficult for some students and staff. Finding the most effective way, again, for organizing Schoology pages for ease of use for everyone has also been a challenge. For improvement, we're focusing on Schoology. I've talked about that. The new primary loop traffic loop has been opened. So we moved the daycare buses to create a new drop off and pickup loop by color for the primary school to alleviate burden of traffic in the McCoy loop. So we're continuing to look at traffic patterns because of the 324 kids that are not riding buses. And we'll continue to build capacity to troubleshoot our classrooms with iPads. At the secondary level, again, I've talked about the performing arts piece because we've had to make some adjustments related to the acoustics that are basically resonating in specific areas. So our best laid plan now has to be adjusted. We have to find new and more effective ways to use Schoology course pages to meet the needs of kids and prepare to continue to adjust and adapt for the teaching and learning situations that are required on our roller coaster ride. So as we look towards the path forward for what happens beginning Monday, October 5th, based upon my conversations with Mr. McClelland, I'm just going to remind everyone as you have this conversation tonight, these are the commitments that have to stay on the table. There absolutely must be a commitment to sustain health and safety protocols regardless of the attendance model that we select. There has to be continued collaboration and problem solving. We do this every single day. Weekly meetings with Franklin County Public Health and other officials will continue. We will actively analyze the data and discussions with the COVID task force and Franklin County Public Health to include positivity rates, hospitalizations, our absenteeism rates, both student and staff, community spread that's happening within our community, specifically New Albany and our zip codes, the cohort situations for how we're grouping kids, our NAPLS data and any orders that come out from the health department, and then refinement and implementation of the health and safety orders and protocols. To that, we also then have to keep our communications, updates, and more for our student, staff, and parents so they know exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it. The community efforts related to mitigation strategies have to continue at home, at school, and in the community. I will tell you, I get emails about this every single day about groups of students standing with their parents or other adults. Starbucks is the most prime location I get an email about. It's not my district property. We do recommend that families demonstrate the mitigation strategies necessary to keep the community safe. When you're on school property, we absolutely need you to be mask up, back up, and wash up as often as possible. I would like to remind everyone, we're trying to do everything as always with positivity, kindness, and grace, because the roller coaster ride is the roller coaster ride. Whatever model we're in, it's subject to change based upon whatever's happening associated to COVID-19. So tonight, the Board of Education gets to have this discussion. I think I've successfully presented the information that you had asked for through my individual conversations with each of you about what you wanted to hear tonight in order to engage in a conversation about the path forward beginning Monday, October 5th. We are in fact stronger together, and I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
I'm sure everyone has questions. I will just start real quickly. I'm starting to sound maybe like a broken record, but again, just thank you to you, Mr. Sawyers, and to all the administrators and staff for the incredible amount of work that you continue to do to, the diligent effort to basically uncover every little pebble to do what's right by our kids as it relates to not only this situation with COVID, but just making sure that they are getting the best education possible every day, and that we are also working to make this the best social and emotional outcome as well, is just commendable. I'm so appreciative that we have the leadership team that we do here at this school, and I have complete confidence that no matter what we decide to do, that it's going to be done in the best way possible. So thank you all again for all the work you're doing. With that, I will open it up to questions and comments.
I had one question. Are we still having clubs this year?
So yes, it depends on which one. The number of students that are enrolled in the club, and then what their meeting schedules are. Some of them have gone virtual. Some of them are possible to meet together if there's less than 10 kids on a specific event and they can socially distance themselves. So each building principal is working that out with middle school and high school students accordingly with their advisors.
So have we communicated anything about clubs yet?
It would go through the building principals. So I don't know what has or hasn't gone out. I don't see every one of those communications, but we can find out.
Okay. I've been asked a couple of times about clubs.
So I would refer any parent or student that asked that question back to the building principal or assistant principal in that building.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from anybody?
Mr. Sawyers, thank you for sharing all the data related to the local incidents of COVID and its relative decline in our school district. I know also we consulted with the New Albany Task Force, and we'll be doing that on a regular basis going forward. Could you
have to unmute?
Hello. Yes, Mr. Sawyers, thank you for compiling all the data related to the COVID incidents in our school district, and also the dashboards that are very helpful in showing the minimal incidents to date and also the minimal quarantines to date. And I think it's really helpful to show also the districts that have been all in for several weeks and how they're doing as well. I know also part of our ongoing diligence is to consult with the task force, and I wondered if you might just be able to share some of summary of the last meeting with that group.
President McClellan, Mr. Darrow, do you want to do it or do you want me to do it? Because you were there. I don't care.
I'm fine with you speaking. Yeah.
Right, that's fine. So, Mr. Newmoff, President McClellan, Mr. Darrow, and I met with the New Albany COVID-19 Task Force earlier this week because we did a presentation on the new CAT system with OSU specifically for them to let them provide input to OSU on what would be meaningful in that system. So after we talked about that, we went through general updates related to what they're seeing specifically related to COVID-19 in the New Albany community, New Albany proper, versus our zip code data, and then talked about what's specifically happening within their hospitals, doctor's office, or practices specifically related to COVID-19. So they affirmed that there is a downward trend. Hospitalization currently is down. So the downward trend continues in Franklin County. We're averaging approximately 40 cases per week, round number, 40 to 42. 70% of the cases in Franklin County are being identified in Columbus proper, based upon the information that Mr. Mazzola provided through Franklin County Public Health, as well as through Dr. Mashika Roberts at Columbus Public Health. The positivity rate this past week was 4.38%. So it's below 5, so it was extremely good news. Both health departments affirmed that, and then our doctors also talked about the positivity of that. So they were very positive about what's happening related to COVID currently. They were also transparent about the fact that they have no crystal ball to understand what's going to happen with the influenza that's about to come because the season will begin. They had some hope because influenza in the southern hemisphere has been mitigated to some extent because of mask wearing. So they hope that same behavior will be seen in the results that happen with influenza here. There will be some challenges in our conversation that we talked about this week associated to differentiating between COVID symptoms and influenza systems. It's going to put a person into a situation where they're going to have to contact their healthcare provider in order to be able to return to school. Most likely, but they were extremely positive about what's happening and felt that the mitigations efforts that the school district has done have been tremendous, that generally speaking, most people are compliant dominantly at school. They are seeing some of the same behaviors that I'm getting emails and phone calls about Market Square, people congregating, not wearing a mask, and that fatigue that's kind of showing up in parts of the community. They have some concern about that, but still feel that our kids have done a tremendous job and that should be in school as much as humanly possible before we actually hit flu season.
Thank you.
Phil or John, did I miss anything?
No, I think you
I think you covered it well, Michael. At the end of the day, the general feeling was that we should be in school.
I'd like to just take this opportunity, I'm going to be a little redundant to John, to thank you again and everyone involved, the entire administration, our teachers, all the support staff. I know we couldn't have successfully gotten to this place in 1 month without everyone working hand in hand together, including our families. So I want to thank our families again for supporting all of our efforts to bring kids back safely. And we do need your continued support to make this transition to 5 days a week, both with reinforcing our protocols with students at home, as well as role modeling for our students, the behaviors that we're requesting to keep everyone safe. I do think it's worth reiterating that some really positive things came out of this first month. I know my son Matthew commented that he had an opportunity to get to know his teachers a little better than he normally would have in the first month of school, that small environment was a nice experience. I also think it gave us all a chance to learn the new standards and bring kids into the new environment in a way that allowed them to learn successfully. So again, it feels like this is the right next step from our measured approach to bring kids back now. All the data is pointing to this being the best opportunity to bring everyone back to school, and we all agree that that's where students belong. So I just want to thank everyone again for your commitment to making this successful, the entire administration, teachers, support staff, and our families.
Anybody have any other comments or questions? I had the opportunity to speak with each of you. I'm sure each of you had a chance to talk with each other as well. So I put together with the assistance of Mr. Sawyers, a draft resolution for us to vote on tonight. So I'm going to pass that over to each of you, and then we'll just take a couple of minutes. We'll recess so that people can review that really quickly, and then we will continue our discussion. So we'll take a couple-minute recess here. Having reviewed, before I read this, since it is only one page tonight, I won't do what I did last time and make everybody read it. Are there any additions, corrections that anybody would like to add to this document?
Was this the same document that was, we had major modifications of any sort since the version this afternoon?
You're unmuted.
No.
Yeah, my question was there any changes from this afternoon? Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I have read this afternoon. For some reason, I thought we had something in here related to ensuring that we were monitoring, and obviously that's been our position thus far. We've hesitated, we walked, we jogged, and now we're going to go propose to go all in. I think I just want to make sure that it's clear that our intention, and it's clear to the public, is to consistently stay with this, stay with the task force, stay with health and state and local departments. I guess we do have a whereas, but we have carefully considered that guidance, and we'll continue to carefully consider that guidance moving forward.
We can, we can edit to say, whereas the Board of Education has carefully considered and will continue to consider the orders.
I'd be comfortable putting that
That's
in.
If that is. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
So I'll read it with that added word, with those added words, and then at that point we'll make a decision and move on, unless there's any other edits that anybody has. Okay. So the resolution that I'm going to put a motion on the floor that we adopt this evening. The motion would be for this resolution, the Albany Plain Local Schools Board of Education Resolution, October 1st, 2020. Whereas on August 7th, 2020, the New Albany Plain Local Board of Education adopted a resolution affirming that the responsible restart plan developed for the 2020-2021 school year is in the best interest of district faculty, staff, students, and families to provide a flexible plan that includes both in-person instruction and virtual learning to accommodate the unique needs of each student, and to maintain the ability to continue to engage students through e-learning, in the event schools are mandated to close at any time during the 2020-2021 school year. And whereas on September 17th, 2020, the New Albany Plain Local Board of Education updated the responsible restart plan developed for the 2020-21 school year to include the Hybrid Plus plan from September 25th, 2020 through October 2nd, 2020. And whereas the administration, faculty, staff, and students have demonstrated success to date in practicing and adhering to the required health and safety protocols to attend school. And whereas the Board of Education has carefully considered and will continue to consider the orders and guidance from state and local health departments, the input of the New Albany COVID-19 Community Task Force, as well as faculty, staff, parents, and community members. And whereas it remains the intent of the New Albany Plain Local Board of Education to open our schools to in-person instruction to best meet the academic and developmental needs of each student electing to attend school in person, and any all extracurricular activities in accordance with reasonable health and safety protocols. Now therefore be it resolved, the New Albany Plain Local School District Board of Education affirms the continued implementation of the board-approved responsible restart plan. And be it further resolved, beginning Monday, October 5th, 2020, it is affirmed appropriate by the Board of Education that all in-person students, Maroon and Gold student groups, shall begin full-time daily attendance for the 2020-21 school year in accordance with the adopted 2020-21 school year calendar, unless otherwise enacted by the New Albany Plain Local Schools Board of Education or public health or government order. And be it further resolved, the New Albany Plain Local School District Board of Education directs the superintendent to immediately implement and broadly communicate such requirements to faculty, staff, parents, and community members. And be it further resolved, students whose families elected to participate in the virtual learning program for at least the first semester of the 2020-21 school year shall continue their daily virtual participation uninterrupted through January 15th, 2021 to maximize the staffing levels assigned to meet student needs. With that motion on the floor, I request a second.
Second.
That was a tie. I'm going to give it to Mr. Newman. With that second, could I have a roll call, please?
President McClelland,
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski,
Yes.
Vice President Darrow.
Yes.
Resolution passes. We have no other business before the board this evening, so with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ms. Kalinowski? Mr. Bush? Roll call, please.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Vice President Darrow.
Yes.
President McClelland.
Yes, you were muted, by the way. We are adjourned. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 12th. It'll be at 6 p.m. and we'll be right back here. So thank you all. Have a good evening.